Hello, Internet. We're two on one. Who are you? It's a terrible intro, but it's one that works because this is Internet's
Sorry.
only podcast. This time about theology, pop culture, its intersections, and it's a super spooky episode. I'm
Ooh.
the Reverend Arthur Stewart, one of your co-hosts.
I'm the Reverend Stephanie Kendall, one of your other co-hosts, and it is good to be with you this Halloween week, Arthur.
Yes, I'm
Yes.
gonna talk like a ghost the whole time.
Ghosts talk like that? Are you watching the new CBS show Ghosts? I was
No.
like, oh, it's actually really funny and
I,
well done.
I have
Well,
enough time for
I,
like Housewives, Ted Lasso when it's on, and we're getting through the morning show. That's it.
and then whatever we have on this, I'm with you. I'm like, people are like, are you watching this? I was like, I'm watching whatever is happening on 2-1-1 this week.
Right. Like I've watched Mary Poppins and I've been like binging
Sure.
Anna DeFranco, and it's been a weird, yeah.
It has been kind of weird, but our girl Brandy Carlisle crushed it on SNL,
And
and
it brought back What Up With That, which is just the most seven skit that Saturday Night Live
this is
does.
very seven
It just
skit.
makes me happy.
And it had it was a very, and I love SNL anyways, but you put Jason Sudeikis and Brandy Carlisle. It was an episode made for me. It was the only episode I ever thought about going early and trying to do the standby ticket line, but so did everyone else. And by like 7:30, like the Friday before, it was wrapped around like 3 blocks. And I was like, and you had to stay there all night. And I was like, your girl's too old for this. I'm sorry.
That's a cool statement, though, about what positivity and transparency do. Hey, I got a question for you since it's Halloween week, right?
Oh, please. Yeah.
If you could dress up as any liturgical holiday, what would you dress up as and what would it look like?
Ooh, any liturgical holiday. I think I would do Pentecost,
Okay.
and I spent a lot of time working on Hunger Games back in the day. And I would do like the girl on fire, that big red dress that she comes out. I think it's book 2. Deuces, don't quote me on that one. But when she comes out and does the big, like it's on fire and like it's the big fire. I don't know how I would do it. It would be a little bit of magic, but like I would want to lean into the fires of Pentecost.
Very nice. I would dress up as the Feast of John the Baptist and find a way to do like the costume where my head's on a platter, and like the
Yes.
body is above, and yeah, I'd do that.
I like it.
Because I mean, why not?
Why not?
I bring up liturgical holidays because I was thinking about this where like I was like, I wish I had a stole for every Sunday. If that's not the most 70 thing in the world to say, I don't know what is. But like then I was like, okay, so if I did an All Saints stole, it would probably have to be black. But what I'd want is stripes like right on the shoulder that are orange and green. See if you can catch what I'm doing here. And then black and blue, and then like yellow and kind of maroon.
Uh-huh.
Because it's the Sanderson sisters, and it's just this little like off color thing. And the person who could probably help me put this together, make my dreams a reality,
We
is
know a
Jeff
guy.
Wonder. Yeah, he's our guy. He's our sponsor. He's our friend. And Jeff Wonder Designs is a purveyor, creator, and fascinator of liturgical textiles of all shapes, varieties, sizes, denominations, and desires.
I was looking through Jeff Wonder's stuff the other day too, because again, it's Clergy Appreciation Week, and I generally like to pick a clergy friend. When you're clergy, you have lots of clergy friends.
Yeah.
And the conversation is, are people showing up and doing any sort of appreciation for you or not? And I have some friends that are just like rural solo pastors that their churches don't have a lot of money. They don't, like they love them, but like, I don't even know that people know that it's Clergy Appreciation Week or a month. And so I picked generally one friend to buy something special for. So I was perusing the stole catalog, as you will, at Jeff Wonder, and he has one, and I don't know what it was for, but I remember looking at it, and it's got, I want to say it's Jezebel and the Dragon in Revelation, but it is appropriately colored, like it is like, it is beautiful. It is historically accurate with who and what these women and people would have looked like. So you're not having to deal with the like white Jesus and things like that. It's and I just really, as a church that identifies as multicultural, multilinguistic and multi-ethnic and all the things, right? We like to really try and live into the divinity of diversity. it's important to us that our biblical figures are adequately represented by the images that we wear and look at, to say these are actually who these people were, right? And so,
and it's amazing how it's probably not the biggest change to make, like production wise, but it's a huge statement, and it's a beautiful statement. We appreciate Jeff Wunrow's thoughtfulness.
And it's one of the only spaces that I've seen in liturgical garb and wear and textiles that actually like takes into account like the importance of race within the conversation of biblical culture. And I was just really impressed by it. I don't know that I'm going to buy that one particularly, but like literally I was like, Jeff can do anything. I was legitimately just impressed, and was like, now I've got my own like Pinterest board of like all the stoles I want from Jeff.
Well, and they're all there. They're at Jeff Wunrow, JEFFWUNROW.com. You should buy one for Clergy Appreciation Month for Christmas that is coming up. We have a promo code right now. It is 2-on-1, all one word, all letters, 2-on-1, that you can use at the end of checkout for 15% off your entire stole order. We are going to remind you and encourage you to use that code, because at the end of 2021, that's it. It's gone. It's done. And it's the best discount out there for Jeff Wunrow stoles.
So do with that with you as you will, deuces. Love your clergy well. If you can't afford a Jeff Wunrow stole or whatever, go in with friends. It can be a group gift for those in your life that do ministry all year long, and you want to say we appreciate you. So head on over to Jeff. We are thankful for Jeff and all the ways in which he shows up and all the things that he's doing.
Absolutely. And once again, jeffwunrow.com. Hey, so our friend Dana's back.
I know.
And I'm just going to bring her in.
Bring her in.
Good morning. And
Dana. Sorry, I'm going to start like leaning into my inner Bette Midler at all times.
I think we all have an inner Bette Midler, and it depends on if we feed her or not. I think and she's sideways.
Am I sideways?
There you are.
Rotate. There I am.
There you are. That was wonderful. Dana, welcome back to
Hocus.
It is.
Thank you.
And thank you for talking Hocus Pocus with us today.
Oh, thanks for having me, y'all. It is such an honor to be here always. And I'm so excited. We are covering my all-time two favorite movies. So thank you.
Aren't they both by the same director? I was like watching again last night and I was like,
Kenny Ortega, yeah.
Yeah.
Kenny Ortega, yes. And I don't know, I can't remember if Kenny was the director for Dirty Dancing or if he was the cinematographer maybe, or choreographer. I can't, but you're right. And that it's the same team, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But we talked about bringing you back on for the, like you were like, let's do Hocus Pocus, because it was one of your original things, and you were like, Arthur, it's not scary, because we all know that Arthur doesn't get scary. Which before we even met you, ingratiated you into like this community that we were like, this is funny and great.
But my response was, I'm a gay millennial. I promise you I've seen Hocus Pocus more than a human adult should.
Classic response.
It is. But tell us a little bit about what you've been doing since the last time we've seen you, because you have some cool things on that are happening, and why Hocus Pocus.
Oh my goodness. Well, and the two are related actually. So Hocus Pocus is one of only two movies that my father ever took me to in the theater. The second one was The Color of Money. I saw that one before Hocus Pocus. Maybe we'll have to cover that one at some point. That's a whole different genre. My dad loved magic and hustling, and these two movies cover all kinds of territory when it comes to those two things. And so Hocus Pocus is near and dear to my heart because it's a memory that I have of my father taking me to the movies in 1993. And that is directly related to what I've been doing the past couple of months, because we just launched a podcast about my father, about his theology, his religion, I'll put that in air quotes, and also his big persona. And the podcast is called Breaking Good. It is about me growing up as the fledgling drug dealer and parakeet lookout for my father's drug trafficking business. And so you can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts. And that podcast is sponsored by the Louisville Institute because it's about faith and poverty, mental illness, and substance use in the rural Midwest. And so it's about how does the through line of faith run through stories about rural Americans. when they especially are struggling with huge issues, right? And the rural church has played an integral role in their lives. It's been a hub in their lives and provided services and resources. And so what can the rural church do now to help people with their current struggles? So Breaking Good is the podcast, and it's about King, my father, who loved Hocus Pocus. Full circle.
And it's just a fantastic podcast. Like we are the only podcast on the internet, but if you're going to listen to another one, you should listen to Breaking Good, because like I was riding my bike and I got kind of sunburnt because I was listening to the podcast and just kept going because I didn't want it to stop.
I did the same.
Oh, wow.
I did the same thing and almost sent you a message in it because I was walking. I had an appointment down in Lower Manhattan and I was just like, you started it. I was waiting in line after my appointment, like put it back on and then walked all the way home, almost 100 blocks. And like, just like spent the entire day, just like doing some errands, but just like listening to your podcast and like listening to your voice. I was like, I really should probably tell Dina that I just like spent the entire afternoon with her. So
goodness.
Everyone go listen to it. It's really incredible. It's fascinating, fun, like all the things that you want in a engaging storytelling. So go listen to it. It's great.
Thank you both so much. Wow, a sunburn and 100 blocks. I mean, I can't ask for any more than that.
Ooh.
Thank you. Thank
Sunburn
you.
and 100 blocks. That's going to be the title of our chapter when I rep my members, Biff.
There you go.
I got to tell you my connection to Hocus Pocus if I could, because it's the lead. Max Dennison is played by an actor named Omri Katz, and Omri Katz was also in a show called Erie, Indiana that showed on Fox Kids, and it was like children's Twilight Zone, and it was just weird. And I remember I watched it like in the 90s and I kind of had a crush on Omri Katz, who was like around my age in Erie, Indiana. And then Hocus Pocus comes out and suddenly he's 5 years older, because Erie, Indiana was made at the end of the Reagan administration. And there's like Max Headroom references and all like stagflation and stuff like that, but they never showed it. And then Fox Kids, anyways, so I had this weird like time jump where I remember thinking when I was like 10 years old, Omri Katz is too old for me, which is also just a weird thing to think and also to share. But yeah, there you go. I was like, oh, people grow up.
Cute boys being too old. It was never my issue. I'll just name that. I very much was like in first grade being like, I'm going to marry Luke Perry, like who was almost 40. And I was like,
yes.
But Luke Perry was playing a first grader when you were, never mind.
And so, but I remember I also went and saw Hocus Pocus. I was 10. I was very much like, it was very fun. I'm a big Bette Midler person and like, you know, who isn't? And so very much was like, I'm gonna, you know, I think my parents just were like, let's go see this movie, but have a very vivid memory of seeing that in the theater with a friend. And it was one of the first movies that my parents also didn't want to see. So they dropped us off. We all went to the movie theater together, but they went to a different movie. And my friend and I went and saw Hocus Pocus. So it also felt weirdly like liberating, right? It was like the first time that it was like, I'm 10 now. And so I can go into this space by myself. And my parents were like, all right, we can do that. I also, for what it's worth, y'all, my shout out to Target, am wearing a Hocus Pocus t-shirt that I found last week and text both of these two and was like, I've got a costume.
Yeah. Awesome. And what a cool rite of passage, Spiff. Like that's such that this movie is imprinted on your journey. Yeah.
So much so, very much so. And I also always have liked magic, like just for what it's worth. Never had a weird thing about magic, like, you know, that other people have. Magic has always been very cool to me. The minute I could, I like found someone that I knew that could get me into Magic Castle in Los Angeles. And I've been a couple of times now, and it is phenomenal. It is one of my favorite places just to like go and hang. And I think because, and we were talking about this earlier, I'm an Enneagram 3. And so I generally can I can connect things. I can see the things and I like to figure out how it works. And like, I want to be in on the know because I want to be in the network to like help move people forward. And magic is so far beyond that. And so I was like, whether it's like witch magic or, you know, like any type of magic, I'm in. And so, I've just always loved it. And so I'm very excited. But my first question for all three of us, because I think that there is something to it, again, because we were talking about Enneagram types earlier, but which Sanderson sister are you?
Oh, I'm Sarah SJP. So for sure, like kind of flighty into the boys, like always like troublemaker, distracted, ADD. Absolutely. Yes, that's me. And I think her name is Sarah in the movie. Is that right? It's
Yeah.
Mary's. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Winnie, Sarah, and Mary. So I'm definitely Sarah. How about y'all?
So I'm actually going to push back on the question. So Steph, why don't you answer?
Okay, you can put back on the question because I mean that's fair. I wanted to be Sarah, and I'm definitely Winnie.
And see, I want to be Winifred, but I think I'm Mary. And
are we all technically Thackerybinx trapped in that world?
Well, no, so I think,
Right.
and this is stuff I'm not entirely positive on. I think the Sanderson sisters all represent a subtype of Enneagram, the self-preservation, social, and sexual. Where, right? So Mary is social, Winnie is self-preservation, and Sarah can I tell you my first moment of being a girl dad where I was just terrified, like deeply chilled, terrified, was when Sarah Sanderson went, "Boys," and my 10-year-old daughter repeated it perfectly. I was just like, oh God, I have to buy locks. And then I came back to myself, but I have these like dad flashes. It's weird.
That's very cool.
I like that question though, and I like that we're all kind of the different Sanderson sisters.
I do too. Yeah.
And we're all, I bet we can all say we're all also a little bit of them, because I also remember, I have a very distinct memory of loving when Mary picks the vacuum.
Yes.
And that was my, like, I think forebrain, my creative, like, I don't want to be like anyone else, like what else but it also gave permission for anything to be magical. And I really liked that it wasn't, the traditional brooms and things. And as someone who was always kind of in an escapism in my head, right? And I was like, what are these things? Like, I could now look around my house and say, oh, anything can be magical. And that's really exciting to kids trying to escape for lots of different reasons. Like I had a really lovely home life and things like that, but it was also just like my need to not be here for whatever reason, and so I was like, I am very much like, ooh, this can, so I like, then went around my house grabbing the vacuum or grabbing things and was like, here are wands and spell books and things like that. And so have we lost, sorry, I'm gonna kind of move that into my also kind of other first question, which is, have we lost that ability to see, like, within church structure or faith, like however you want to interpret that, have we lost that ability to say all of these things contain the spirit of the living God or that type of magic?
Ooh, very well said. Yes, right? Because it's the idea that the mundane, the ordinary can be made sacred, as in communion elements. Even I was thinking about this last night. I did an All Saints service for the Virginia conference, wherein we were having communion together virtually, and we were instructed that whatever we have in front of us becomes our communion elements. And I had saltines and water in front of me. So it's the idea that saltines and water have the ability, we won't maybe call it magic, right? But the idea that it can become sacred, right? There is a transformation that happens, not a transubstantiation, but some sort of transformation. But you're right in that, have we become so strict? Have we become so formal that we have forgotten that Jesus operated and ministered in a very simple world, right? With very simple elements and very simple rituals. And so have we put on airs about certain things that we really don't need to put on airs about, and not seen the everyday magic and things?
Well, I think this is something, the answer is yes, we've lost that, and yes, we have to cultivate it. It's what we always say with communion, because we're in person and we're like sanitizing our hands and putting on masks is part of the liturgy at this point at the table. And the table is, we've moved away from the kits, and now it's 2 cups, juice in one, thing that's supposed to represent bread in the other. Joining Christ's suffering is what it says on the box. Super weird. And it's but
it's an invitation.
But what we say to people is, if you're not comfortable coming to this table, every table is Christ's table. That's the point of what we practice each week. And my husband, whom I love very much, is like, And that table has to be special. Like there has to be the paschal mystery in which we engage in this time and in this space together. So I would say that I've over magicified things a little bit. Like there is a sacrament at that table, but it's not an exclusive sacrament.
Yes.
Like
Very
that.
well said.
Spiff?
What about you, Spiff? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think so. That you know, we've lost a little bit of it, and we've placed too much in certain places. That it's like, this is the thing, and rather than saying you are the thing, and I, you know, yeah, I think that there's something to the, especially at communion and for disciples particularly, right? That's like the only thing we need for worship. And so other people probably disagree with me, but in my theological understanding for us, like that is the cornerstone of who we are. And it's a little bit like there's the anger when you show up with milk and Oreos and they're like, oh, it's just the kids or whatever, but it's also it's like, no, this is what we have, right? Like let's not like waste what we had on hand and whatever. And because the spirit of the living God, whatever you want to call it, is there. And I find myself, and I'm just noticing this right now, I am finding myself as someone who grew up outside of church. I was always confused why people of faith eschewed magic, like the language of magic and the understanding of magic. When outsiders looking in, it looks very magical. Totally. And like the Bible, the stories, all the miracles seem a little like magic. And so for me, my road in became like, well, I believe in magic. Like, so what stops me from believing in Jesus? Because like those were super different for me.
And all, you know, hocus pocus literally comes from the Latin mass, like hocus. Right. It's part of it, and do with that what you will.
Totally. And divination is a huge part of Christian theology. And so, and it's a part of indigenous traditions. I mean, we read about it, we teach about it, but we consider it, you know, as I'm teaching students about African indigenous traditions, they always land on the word witchcraft. And they're like, ooh, Professor Trent, isn't this bad? I'm like, no, let's unpack it, right? Let's look at it, and let's look at it through the lens of various traditions. Divination is a huge part of Christian theology and Christian practice. The idea that you are connecting through the Holy Spirit in order to gain some insight, some wisdom on current events like that. Now, folks would argue and nitpick that and say, well, you know, communication with the dead, et cetera. But what about All Saints Day? What about the thin space of All Hallows Eve and all of the liturgical holy days that are part of our rich tradition? I'm with you, Spiff. Like, it starts with magic.
It starts with magic. And also, again, like, we're like, oh, zombies communicating with the dead. I was like, I'm sorry, have you never heard of the resurrection? Are we not people of the resurrection trying to communicate with this God in this new way? Does Jesus not resurrect Lazarus? I was like, what on earth is this like pushback to magic? Because if anything, it makes people feel uncomfortable that there's something beyond their control. But also for me, that's what faith is. It's leaning into that which is beyond your control to say, and yet here I am. Let me participate in that.
And magic always has to have constraints, right? Like we have to have muggles and squibs in order to have wizards and wizards, or we have to have midichlorians, and you have to be born with it. This is a total twist out, but it makes sense, I promise. The big problem with episode 8, The Last Jedi, that people had was that some random kid enslaved on some uber capitalist planet was force sensitive and made a broom like fly into his hand. Because magic has to be unique. And the whole instance of this idea of anybody can divine the will of that which is bigger than us, well, that's wicked in and of itself, because there has to be a monopoly. Because that way, if I have that power, it's mine to keep.
Oh, wow. Gosh, I didn't think about it that way. Hello, Christian majority.
There's this idea. We're doing the 7 modern deadly sins at the church. That's our sermon series right now. And also Saturday night, we did our first movie night, and we were fully licensed and we were properly vetted and we did everything correct. So don't come at me, or I have receipts. And that's for our general listeners and the inevitable Disney lawyer who's listening. But we showed Hocus Pocus.
There's probably a couple, not gonna lie.
Yeah, like
Right.
again, like we have receipts. But we showed Hocus Pocus, and promoting it in our neighborhood and to the people around us, we're like, this is not a trick or trap. We're showing it. We can't tell you what the movie is, but we're showing a fully secular, family-friendly movie. And somebody asked, like, well, shouldn't we do a prayer or like something? And I said, why? Like, why can't this just be enough? Anyways, sorry, but doing the 7 deadly sins and xenophobia, I'm getting that look from you, Spiff. I know I'm talking too much.
No, I'm fascinated.
No.
I went down a different but similar rabbit hole.
Well, please.
No, I mean, finish your story.
It's so we talk about xenophobia, and I brought up Richard Twiz, and in Saving the Gospel from the Cowboys, Twiz talks about how he had an evangelical Christian retreat center that he had deposited, and he said, we're doing a drum circle and we're going to do like American Indian indigenous cultural practices. And they wrote back and said, it's demonic, you can't do that. And he said, not demonic, I'm a Christian pastor. And they said, it is demonic, here's your deposit. And he made sure to name them by name in his book. And I love him, and I'm sad he's dead. And maybe I'll light a candle for him on Sunday.
Wow.
But it's that idea that we have to control the narrative. That brings up my question, which is this. The Sanderson sisters, are they redeemable? Is there anything redemptive in their story, or are they just evil?
That's a great question. I find them charming and redeemable, but I think it's because we sort of going back to the Enneagram, we get to see them at their healthiest and at their unhealthiest, right? So they're clamoring in their behavior to save the day for themselves, right? But they're also, so that's like an unhealthy behavior. But then do you notice the ritual that they do, their calming circle, but more importantly, the ritual that they do when they speak of their mother, right? So when they say, oh, mother, and then they stand at attention and like put their hands on their hearts and like salute to their mother. And their mother, right, is the one who ends up sort of pointing them in the right direction. We'll say, perhaps she does, perhaps she doesn't. In that they land at Satan's house, right? The master's house on Halloween with Penny Marshall and Medusa.
Shout out to the Marshalls.
Oh, it's so great. So great. But it's this idea of, you know, they almost have a reverence for mother, and they have a reverence for magic and rituals and the spell book. And so in that way, I find them sort of charming and redeemable. And they never lose hope. They never lose hope that they're going to live perpetually.
And see, I think redemption has to come from community. And since they want to eat community, I don't know if they can be.
Okay, but can I push back on that? Because this is where I went down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I'm with you. I kind of asked myself the same question. Like, they're doing some questionable stuff. And it starts off questionable, right? Like the whole thing when you're with Thackerybinx, and also shout out to my best friend from high school, Brian Dare, who named his black cat Thackerybinx. And so like that cat was just around forever. And so Hocus Pocus was
waiting for Houdini to talk for 11 years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. My cats talk, so it's fine. I have full conversations, but that's not the point. The point is that the rabbit hole I went down during watching this film, I paused it, was 1693 Salem witch hunt, spiral, because I was like, I don't know much about it. I grew up in California, like you hear the like stories and the lore, but like I didn't really know like what happened, right? And so part of me, when I asked myself that question, because as I do, like, are these people redeemable? Aren't they just trying to like be pretty by eating kids? And then like part of my 3 is like, ooh, like, is that a thing? And like, not really, but you know what I mean? But I was like, so redemption comes from community, but their community was slaughtered and murdered for lots of different reasons. And I don't fault those that try to maintain their community through any act necessary to make sure that their culture and history is not lost. And now I realize that that's maybe a stretch because this is a you know, we're talking about like fictional witches
Mhm.
who are doing bad things. But
Mhm.
it's very much set, and like the impetus for it is people who were under religious persecution, murdered for whatever reason, particularly the
Right.
outcasts, particularly indigenous people from South America, you know, like, and so for me, I was like, Sanderson sisters particularly, I think if they come back into community, I'm very excited about Hocus Pocus 2, y'all.
I know.
I know. So I'm like, okay, are they, yes, they can be redeemed. They are, if they engage in that way. But witches as a whole absolutely are all in my head are already redeemed, because these types of stories say you have killed us for no reason, and there we are everywhere and always, right? And so here's us trying to persevere. And so that was my both spiral and kind of a little bit of a pushback to the redemption question, because I think like learning about is her name Tituba, I believe, who was like one of the very first indigenous women who was named a witch in Salem, who was an enslaved woman. And then one of the other ones I was reading, I'm sorry, I like missed their names, but it's like one of the goodies or the Sarahs was like just known for not being engaged in the church, and they just like didn't particularly like her because she was an older woman, unmarried, no kids. And I was like, oh, so that's my culture. These are my like they're people like me who are just men saying, and their wives and whatnot being like, I saw them doing some sketchy things. This is happening in my life that I don't know about. Let's blame it there and let's kill them.
Yeah, Spiff poisoned the crops.
I poisoned the crops. Also weird, the first execution of one of the witches in Salem happened on my birthday, just or like 290 or 390 years earlier than I was born. But I was like, oh, there's a weird connection there. And like the second person indicted was named Ann Sears, and my middle name is Ann and my grandmother's last name was Sears. And I was like, so then I went on an ancestry, like, am I related to someone like to her?
Oh.
So anyways, that's all. There was again, like I said, a spiral. This is my like 3 a.m. ADHD brain spiral being like, am I a witch?
But no, this is a great point though, because besides the wanting to eat children for the preservation of the physical self, right? We'll take that off the table. But it's the idea that these are marginalized women. They are not a part of puritanical society. They are the people that Jesus gravitated towards, right? Like they are part of the ministry. Here they are. And so I think that's why I do find them redeemable for sure.
Well, so, and I mean, there is something to the fact that they were colorful in a time where everybody wore black and gray and white.
Oh, for sure.
And there is something to their cracking jokes on the gallows, which I don't know. I got to ask my weird question, because my answer was going to be about the Order of Melchizedek, but I did that last week, and I don't want to keep hammering that thing. So, okay. Max takes his sister Danny and they go trick-or-treat. And they go to this big old house because that's where Danny threw herself onto the hay to sob, which incidentally, my daughter looks at me and she goes, drama queen. And I was like, yep, you're right, Blackbot, she's a kettle. But they go to Allison's house and there's like this restoration Jacobean like wigs and fops party happening. Can I tell you that the biggest disappointment that Hocus Pocus provided in my life is that there aren't actually Halloween parties like the ones in Salem.
Oh, for sure.
And if they threw one, even if they were like, you're going to dance yourself to death, I would be there. Anyways, so the Wigs and Fop party, are they under the spell that is cast at the town hall party? They are. So it's just all adults are just like grooving and dancing. Like,
yeah, they dance. The idea is that they dance till they die. The spell that they're under is that they dance until they die, and then when at the end, when the spell is broken, that's when they all come out, and that's
I mean, the Wigs and Fops people, the restoration party at Allison's house, was that covered by the spell? Because I thought it was just local to all the people dancing in the moment. They never bring
like
up
that.
the
They were
big house full of adults again.
Right. They don't. I feel like maybe they're under their own spell. Just
blow up, or why are all these zombie children walking towards the Sanderson Museum? And they could also go, ooh, Cherry Clan, because that was the most 90s moment of the film.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was, yeah, that, or I think still, and I think about this often, and I don't, again, because it imprinted on my brain as a 10-year-old.
Yabos?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Billy cutting his mouth open and like the flies and the moths coming out, and her and Winnie sewing up his mouth because she had dated him, but then she caught him with Sarah. And so, but to not tell her secrets. And I was like, what a self-preservation thing to do, to be like, for eternity, my friend, here you go. And then the first thing he does, first of all, I think it's a narrative and sharing, like, hey, if listen to people, right? Give people the chance to speak and listen to them, because you're afraid of, or we're afraid of Billy at the first part, right? We think that he's coming to us, and with good reason, but really what he's trying to do is get help to set, like, to liberate his own mouth, to be able to say the words he wants to, which is telling Winnie off, which is like the kind of silly part of that. But really it's, you know, so much of this movie is people telling you who they are. We are witches, you know, they're like, and the Sanderson sisters, they're like, this is who we are, and no one believes them. And I think we do a disservice to our communities when we ask people to show up authentically, even in Halloween, whatever that means, because I think costumes also tell you a lot about someone. But like, we don't believe people when they tell us who they are, for better or for worse. Or do we? I don't think we do, but I'm interested in y'all's opinion.
No. And even Thackerybinx, you know, at the beginning of the movie, tries to warn his family, his parents. And no, I mean, obviously he doesn't talk with them, but they don't believe him. Like, he's just sort of cast aside. This whole movie, now to think about it, is about marginalization. I mean, it has, and to go back to your question, Arthur, about the sort of hoity-toity party, my sense was that they were under the spell of being like white privileged, you know, upper class folk. And that's a whole different kind of spell,
so
right?
They're under the spell of gated communities.
I mean, we must name, because we also got thrown out, like, when we didn't name that movie, what that Dirty Dancing is a movie about the Jewish people and the Jewish community. And so want to just like rename that was an oversight on our part, that we look at these movies through our own lens, and neither of us kind of centered on that, you know. So there's that. But also, this movie is very white, and so there is a lot of privilege, a lot of, you know, the things when we talk about marginalization. I just want to name that we are not talking about like, oh, poor white people need to be seen and heard, but it's class privilege. It's those that have been historically marginalized, women, children, things like that. So
because you notice that the folks, exactly. I'm so glad you named that, right? And we could do a whole nother episode on Dirty Dancing, because that is a huge through line. Judaism, tikkun olam, repairing the world, doing good for others. I mean, all of that. And in this film, Allison's parents in that party, you notice the people that are attending her parents' party, which they have every year, are not the same people that are at the town hall, right? It's this idea of, are these parents, this gathering, are they too good to go to the town hall party, right? What's the discrepancy there?
And Jacobean costumes, like, are in themselves ridiculously expensive because they're hand embroidered and there's intentionally intricate design on it. And I don't know if you've priced powdered wigs lately, but I have. Don't ask why, it's a long story. Those are expensive. And obviously you're not going to bring your homemade powdered wigs like, oh, I got cotton balls and glued them to like, you're going to go get the right thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And you contrast their house too with the Marshall's home, wherein Penny Marshall, aka Medusa, right, is just...
wait. I like that we just decided it is Gary and Penny Marshall just pretending to be a married couple. Like, they don't actually have names. They're just Gary, and that's what the filmmakers intended. Let's be honest.
For sure.
Yes, of course, yes. Satan and Medusa, of course.
Satan and Medusa. And there, but I also love that even they bring in, you know, like mythology from other spaces too. Like, that even the witches that are, you know, part of the, I don't know, the antithesis of the Christian identity for some people, that they even have their own working theology when they're like, oh, the devil, oh, sir, we love you so, you know, and then that naturally there's not even a question that he's married to Medusa, and like, let's bring in that mythology and all of, you know, and so it's like, we can hold all of those things tenderly and with care and love and joy if you come at it from that space. And I was like, oh, this is so fascinating, because again, I have not watched this movie in years, just for whatever reason. And so what I really like about 2-on-1 just writ large is that a lot of things I'm getting to experience as a person of faith for the first time, because I came to church so late, that I have this new perspective paired with this nostalgic understanding. And so like, and what weighs more, what has influenced me more? And it's like a little bit of both. But I get to
as someone who watches Hocus Pocus on October 1st, that just shocks me, because shouldn't you do everything?
I know. I have other rituals though. Again, like there are other things that I, you know, like Thanksgiving, I watch Gilmore Girls every year, and that's a weird thing. So whatever.
That's funny.
Doesn't matter. But I want to talk a little bit about the book. The book. I love. And so what role do we think it plays in the telling of this story as people of faith who also follow a book?
Well, it's living. It's a living, breathing document first, right? Which is our biblical heritage, is that this is a living, breathing narrative for us, that speaks to us, that divinates to us in our modern day lives.
The whole bound with human skin thing. So I was a bookbinder for a few years. Like that was my super weird getting sober hobby. And I really liked it. And I wish I could do it still in Wichita, but I don't. And I've had numerous conversations with bookbinders about what it would mean to be able to bind a book in human skin, because really leather is leather when you come down to it, which is gross. But I think about it that it's wrapped in human experience, and that the book looks back at the one reading it. And honestly, like I get it. This is all meant to be, you know, this is the evil side, this is the flip side, this is everything else. But I think about the fact that there's an eye in that book, which indicates a sentience, and that it looks back at you. And honestly, instead of it being this is God himself, intentional use of male pronouns inside a, you know, the KJV English, what if we said that the Bible is kind of scary, and that it is bound in humanity, and it does look that it's a living, breathing document, in that, you know, the joke is always, you look to the Bible for guidance, and you flip it open, and it's and Judas's carrot went out and fell off a cliff and burst open, and then you close it and open it up again, and it opens to, now go and do likewise, and ha ha ha. But there's that idea of Scripture can confront you.
Well, and there was that that story that came out last year, y'all. I didn't do the research because I didn't know this is where we were going with it, but I'm excited about it. That there was a book in an archive in like Utah or Colorado that was bound in indigenous skin, and there was a fight over who actually got the book, right? Because like they were like, well, it's history and it's our archive, and like the people were like, no, but these are our people, like these are ours. And so, and they got the book back, right? It ended up being like you got a proper burial and things like that.
There are 6 known books that are bound in human skin, like in accessible, but to be like in museum kind of type things, or archival situations that we're aware of.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's more, and it was like an intention. I want to say it was a Bible too. It was like there was something like very intentional, like we're using this skin to say this thing. And so for me, I was like, and I just learned about that last year again, and hadn't seen Hocus Pocus in a while, so it had been lost on me that there's this human skin. And I was like, so who are you, right? Like who? I love the idea, Arthur, that we're saying that, you know, that the Bible is bound in human experience, because I truly like that is too truthful, and that it continues to speak to us, as Dana was saying, you know, that it is something that informs who we are and has a sentience about it, right? Because it can confront you and can meet you where you're at, and yet there are still sinful spaces in which that understanding has manifested, and why careful theology. So why biblical study, we were talking about this in Bible study on Sunday, like why these communities of Bible study actually matter is because you get to say, these are the experiences, and that is what continues to wrap the Bible in experience, so that we don't have to physically figure out a way to say, here's what it is. I don't have any tattoos because I can't, everyone's like, oh, you should go for your grandma. And people that do that are lovely, right? People that are like, I have this tattoo and it reminds me of so-and-so. And I love that for them. For me, I don't need that because I have my memories, and there is a little, again, just for me, this is not against anyone who does that form of art for themselves, but it was a little bit like in my head like that, right? Like I don't need to wrap or take something physical to know the love and grace of God, because if I study scripture and if I'm in relationship to other people, I feel it deeply.
Very well said. Very well. And let's not, overlook too that the book is dangerous in the movie, and our book is dangerous in real life. And so these rituals, these spells, this syntax of language can be very dangerous. And so a proper understanding, a proper combination, a proper interpretation, a proper exegesis of what's in the book are essential, because it is a dangerous book. The Bible is a dangerous book.
We always tell our youth that yes, scripture is God-breathed, like literally like we talk about the Greek, and we also then point to the creation narrative in Genesis in which humans are God-breathed. And therefore we can interpret the word of God as it and I calling the Bible the word of God always makes me a little more but we get it, right? Okay. I also just want to name this Max's room. Number one, you think he was like, hey, I know how to play the drums, can we work that into the movie? Number two, his bed has fish sheets, and every time I watch the movie I'm like, why do you have fish sheets? Like it's sheets with different kind of freshwater fish on them.
Because he's from California.
Right. But like the big tie-dye peace sign makes sense for the stereotype.
Right.
But like do you have fish sheets? Did you have a lot of like
I'm a grown woman who custom ordered dinosaur sheets. So that's a different, I've always had dinosaur sheets. Because I love
I also had dinosaur sheets. Yes.
Yeah. Exactly. And I had the old school ones, and I think everyone had those like primary colored dinosaur ones. And then when I was like, I'm an adult now, I literally went out and found adult dinosaur sheets.
This is great.
But I was like, oh, that book, just going back to the, like, I wanted to just circle back, because that was like my main point I wanted to make today was like that the book, I love that there is a call to it. And I think that we today have liturgy that calls to scripture, right? Like we'll say the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be, and like you have these immediate responses. And when she says book, the book comes to her and comes alive. And so there's these incantations that we use in our own faith lives to summon that spirit. If that's not what prayer is sometimes, especially like those prayers that like call on the Holy Spirit to be present with us in these times and things like that. But again, in my rabbit hole of research on like 1693's Salem witch hunts, which I was like, how far away am I from that? Can I make it there this week? It was very much like, they're like, oh, well, some of this can be traced back to a single pastor saying, my child is ill and I don't know how to blame it. And you can't blame it on the Bible. You can't blame it on society and the people you're called to serve. So let's blame it on the people outside. And so it is so important that we talk about the things we fear in our faith for whatever reason, right? Because they've been embedded into us socially, historically, all of those things, so that they don't repeat themselves, so that we as pastors and faith leaders don't work our own trauma out on our people, because we have not done the work to say, hey, when I was a kid, I was told witches and wizards were bad and sinful. And so therefore I'm bringing that into this space, even though some of these texts and movies, there are witches in the Bible and there is magic everywhere. And when we don't live into that or bring that into the conversation, I think that we do a disservice to the wholeness of God that is at work in our community.
There was
well said.
at summer camps. we talked about Harry Potter at one point, and he said, according to the Bible, all wizards must be killed. I said, right. According to that same chapter, your parents can kill you the next time you smart off to them. So maybe we should practice a little more nuance and grace for each other.
Right.
Just maybe.
Exactly.
Also, there's the Witch of Endor, and there's also.
I was thinking the Witch of Endor. Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, in prophecy, what is that if not magic in a certain way? I mean, like.
Yes.
There's a lot to
Yes. The Witch of Endor prophecy, Lazarus. We talked about the resurrection of the dead. I mean, yes, it's divination, transubstantiation.
The table in and of itself is an act of magic every single time you come to it.
Right.
Also cannibalism. I don't know. It's all scary and it's
how about we're the second coming of Christ every time we partake of the meal?
Ooh, very good.
And his blood is actually in us. So what does that do in terms of
But that's what I mean. Our faith is both beautiful and scary. And when we don't hold those well together, when we only look at the beautiful or we only look at the scary, we are portioning off a part of God and saying, this is the only God that I know and believe and have faith in, when the rest of God is here to experience.
And that's the exclusivity and the control and power in naming what is and isn't magic and who can and can't wield it. Because I promise you, if there were men who were doing that kind of stuff in Salem in 1693, it would be a totally different story.
They'd be priests.
Right. Oh, there it is. And there it is.
That's the full quote. They'd be.
We're going into the final question. We can't talk about Jay and Ice, except I'm going to say that Jay is such a bad actor. The actor who plays the California guy, really cast just because he looked like a punk. Anyways, we have a final question.
I'm telling the name Thora Birch, I think, is the actor. But Thora Birch and Christina Ricci are the actresses of my childhood, and I associate them with growing up in lots of different ways. I don't know if you were a big Now and Then person, but that the formative movie for me, and so like. Thora Birch as in this, I was like, absolutely, let's do it.
All right, so we have a final question, Dana, as you are well aware of, and I am being cognizant of the time because we could literally talk about Hocus Pocus probably
all day,
forever.
And you have a standing invitation as always, and Hocus Pocus 2 is coming out at some point. So what happens?
2022, next year. It comes out next year. You can look it online. You can see pictures of the new set that they've built. I know. Dana, come on up. We'll go on a trip.
Oh, yes. That'd be awesome. Oh.
All right. Well, Dana, again, thank you so much. Please come back anytime. Shoot us a text. Be like, let's talk this. Like, you're a joy to talk to all the time. Check out Dana's podcast, Breaking Good. It is incredible. Like we said, I literally just like walked the city listening to it. Can't wait for more. But thank you for coming. So as is our final question, what biblical character, theme, verse, book, whatever, are you most reminded of from Hocus Pocus?
First Samuel, the witch of Endor, for sure. But it also has, angels. It's got virgins. It's got the devil. I mean, it is illustrative of the entire Bible, in my opinion.
It really is, and we didn't even talk about virginity as a part of this for all of this, and that's a whole other episode. Yes. So it's all encompassing. It is.
Yeah, we really do probably need to talk about that at some point, because it's such a slanderous thing for a man to be a virgin when he's like 15. Like how much sex should us? Never mind. I just I'll agree about that. And I'm gonna actually talk about Miss Olin in my Miss Olin, the high school teacher. Miss Olin is the prophetess of Tekoa. She is the one who
with your these last couple of weeks have been.
It's okay. The prophetess of Tekoa is the one who told David the parable of the shepherd who stole it. She carries the tradition. She's able to see the bigger picture, and she asks hard questions of people who otherwise would ignore the community around them. And what does it mean that? And also, what does it mean that it's true? We talked about how nobody. I would also argue that Tekoa, Miss Olin, even hoity-toity girl whose name I've forgotten. I'm sorry. girlfriend, Allison,
Mm-hmm.
they do believe it. It's just, it's
Mhm.
simply fact. And that's living into that faith,
Right.
that trust, that belief. So Miss Olin as
That's right.
okay,
Mhm.
Spiff.
So I originally was like, they're like, Max coming in, he's like, we don't believe in this stuff, right? And so like, what an interesting community he has moved into of both kind of the faithful and the secular and the faithful and all of that. And so I was like, ooh, there's a little Corinthian happening there, but that's also because there's a lot of time there of what is secular, what, there's an amalgamation of the people. However,
And a lot of time in the Corinthian letters, so you bring it up every week, but you made fun of me for doing that.
Yes, I will own that. Absolutely. That is exactly what happened. I ended up in a class that made me talk about the Corinthian women prophets, and I delved into the Corinthians, and I made fun of you for doing it, and here we are.
Okay.
You are correct. However, that is not my final answer. My final answer is Max is Matthias. So after Judas leaves, you got to fill a 12th spot. There's this whole search for who it is. Matthias comes in to carry the torch of being part of the community that brings everything forward. So Max comes in to this lineage and this history of, candle lighting and those that are participating in summoning, the spirits and the witches in this part of this story as a kind of afterthought, as like the, this next chapter. So I think that he fills in the Judas spot, which I think Judas is probably around the Billy era. And so he comes in, lights the candle, and continues what is next in the story.
Ooh, wow.
Okay.
Dang, I can tell y'all are getting your demons. This is so impressive. Good gracious.
Yes,
I have been to church and school.
Satan. Happy Halloween. Hey, Dana, thanks so much for joining us on the show today. By the way, little side note, Jay and Ice are dead, right? Like they died in those cages they were left in. Did anybody ever
Good.
find them?
I always wondered that too. Yeah. I feel like Jay, he kind of,
I think the book kept them alive. I think you see the eyes book, or the book's eyes open. That is, first of all, a button in a movie that says, and more to come, right? That's always what happens. And I think that there's something that says that there's something, I don't think the book watches them die. I think the book probably tortures them and like keeps them as part of its own ability to maintain life.
Well, that's gruesome. And maybe
on that note, happy Halloween, deuces.
Happy Halloween, everybody. Dana Trent, thank you again and again. Deuces, please don't forget, we're sponsored by Jeff Monroe. You have until the end of the year to use our discount code 2on1 at checkout. Check out all the stoles, paraments, vestments, miters at Jeff Monroe, JEFFWUNROW.com.
It's Clergy Appreciation Week. Dana, all the clergy in your life, we're going to, just support with Jeff and all the people.
All right. Well, deuces, until next time. This is 2on1, and we'll see you next week. Adios.
Thanks, y'all.